Belgian Malinois was duct-taped to a pole and left for days. What baby did next left? Everyone in tears. The baby's wail pierced through the night for the third time, but this wasn't his usual cry for food or comfort. Marianne Wilson pressed her forehead against the nursery window, exhausted after another sleepless night. Her 15-month-old son, Tommy, typically the calmest baby in the neighborhood, had been inconsolable every time she placed him in his crib near the window. "What's wrong, sweetie?" she whispered, lifting him from the crib. Tommy immediately stopped crying, only to start again when she tried to move him away from the window. His tiny finger pointed insistently toward the overgrown lot next door. 2 houses down, Officer Sarah Collins stared at her reflection in her bathroom mirror, dark circles under her eyes, testament to 72 hours of fruitless searching. Her partner Max, one of Atlanta PD's most decorated Belgian Malinois, had vanished during what should have been a routine drug bust. The last thing she remembered was his unusual behavior at the warehouse, the way he'd suddenly stopped, hackles raised, before disappearing into the shadows. The warehouse operation had gone sideways fast. They'd found the drugs, sure, but Max had picked up on something else. Something that made him break protocol for the first time in 6 years of service. Now he was gone, and the official search was being called off. "We've done everything we can, Collins," Captain Reynolds had said earlier that evening, his voice carrying a finality that made her stomach turn. "We have to face facts. Either Max ran off or..." He'd left the sentence hanging, but Sarah knew what everyone was thinking. Dogs like Max didn't just run off. The morning brought no relief. Tommy's cries started again at dawn, more urgent this time. Marianne had tried everything, checking for fever, offering food, changing his diaper. Nothing worked. The pediatrician's words echoed in her head. "Some babies are more sensitive to their environment. They pick up on things we adults miss." Sarah's phone buzzed. Another dead end. The warehouse security footage had been accidentally deleted, and none of the officers on scene could remember exactly when they'd last seen Max. Something felt off about the whole thing, but without evidence, her hands were tied. The summer heat was building early, the Georgia sun beating down mercilessly. In the Wilson house, Tommy's crying reached a new intensity. Marianne, running on coffee and desperation, finally grabbed her phone and called her husband at work. "Jack, something's wrong. He won't stop pointing at the vacant lot. I know it sounds crazy, but..." She paused, squinting through the window. Something had moved in the undergrowth. Something large. Her heart stopped. Partially hidden by overgrown kudzu, a dark shape was tied to a concrete pole. In the morning light, she could make out fur and what looked horribly like duct tape. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Jack, call 911, now." The dispatcher's call came through just as Sarah was leaving the precinct. "Possible animal abuse situation at 1247 Oakwood Drive. Caller reports a large dog tied to a pole." Sarah's heart raced. Oakwood Drive was less than a mile from the warehouse where Max disappeared. She hit the lights and pushed her cruiser to its limits. The scene that greeted her would haunt her forever. Max, her proud, powerful partner, was bound to a concrete pole with industrial duct tape. His normally pristine fur was matted with blood and dirt. But he was alive. His tail, weak but determined, thumped against the pole when he saw her. As the emergency team worked to free him, Sarah noticed the precision of his bindings. The tape wasn't wrapped randomly. It followed a specific pattern taught only to law enforcement. This wasn't some random act of cruelty. This was a message. From the Wilsons' nursery window, Tommy watched the rescue. His cries finally quieted. His small hand pressed against the glass as the big dog was carefully loaded into an emergency vehicle. Marianne held him close, tears streaming down her face as she realized what her baby had been trying to tell her all along. At the veterinary hospital, Sarah stood guard outside Max's room, her mind racing. The vet's words echoed in her head. "He's severely dehydrated. If he'd been out there another day..." She couldn't finish the thought. Instead, she focused on the facts. 1. Max had discovered something at the warehouse. 2. Someone with police training had tried to silence him. 3. Her partner was alive because a baby refused to stay quiet. Her phone buzzed again. Captain Reynolds. Heard they found Max. Terrible business. Some junkies probably grabbed him for revenge. Sarah's jaw tightened. The captain's voice carried the same odd tone she'd noticed at the warehouse right before Max disappeared. She typed a careful reply, knowing now that she couldn't trust anyone at the department. As night fell, two scenes played out across Atlanta. In the Wilson home, Tommy finally slept peacefully, his mission accomplished. In the veterinary hospital, Sarah pulled out her personal laptop and began documenting everything she could remember about the warehouse operation. Someone had tried to kill her partner, and they'd used police tactics to do it. The question was, how high up did this go? Max, heavily sedated but stable, twitched in his sleep. Even now, his trained nose was picking up scents, processing information. When he woke, he would have a story to tell, and Sarah would be ready to listen. She just hoped they'd both live long enough to expose the truth. The veterinary monitor beeped steadily in the darkness, its green line tracking Max's heartbeat. Sarah hadn't left his side for 36 hours, except for one brief trip to the precinct to file her initial report, a report she'd carefully crafted to reveal nothing about her growing suspicions. Max's blood work had come back with traces of a police-grade sedative, the same kind they used during K-9 training exercises. Sarah kept this information out of the official record, instead telling Captain Reynolds that Max was too traumatized to remember anything useful. A soft knock on the door made her tense, but it was just Dr. Martinez, Max's regular vet. "Sarah, there's someone here you need to meet." She stepped aside, revealing a petite woman holding a baby boy. "This is Marianne Wilson and her son Tommy. They're the ones who found Max." Sarah stood, her exhaustion forgotten. The baby immediately reached toward Max's bed, making the same urgent gesture Marianne had described in her statement. "He hasn't slept through the night in days," Marianne explained, dark circles under her eyes matching Sarah's own. "Not since—" She paused, shifting Tommy in her arms. "The weird thing is, he's calm now. First time in days." Sarah watched as Tommy's eyes tracked every movement Max made. The Belgian Malinois, still heavily sedated, lifted his head slightly at the baby's presence. "How did you know?" Sarah asked softly. "What made you look out that window?" Marianne moved closer to Max's bed, careful to stay behind the medical equipment. "It wasn't me, it was Tommy. He just knew. Started crying every time we went near the window. Wouldn't stop until we checked." She swallowed hard. "If we'd looked sooner—" "You saved his life," Sarah cut in. "Another day out there—" She couldn't finish the sentence. A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Captain Reynolds appeared in the doorway, his broad frame filling the space. Tommy immediately began to cry. "Collins, didn't expect to find you here. Thought you'd be working on the warehouse case." His eyes flickered to Marianne and Tommy, then back to Sarah. "We found some interesting evidence." The baby's cries grew louder, more insistent. Max, despite his sedation, raised his head higher, a low growl building in his throat. "Sir, Max needs rest," Sarah said carefully, noting how Tommy's cries had started the moment Reynolds appeared. "The vet's orders." Of course. Reynolds smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just wanted to check on our hero." Strange thing, though. The warehouse security company finally found that missing footage. Shows Max running off on his own, chasing something into the night. He paused meaningfully, almost like he was hunting without authorization. The threat was clear. They were building a narrative. Max had gone rogue, disobeyed orders, gotten himself into trouble. Classic cover-up. Tommy's wails reached a fever pitch. Marianne tried to quiet him, but the baby kept pointing at Reynolds, his face red with effort. "Sensitive kid," Reynolds remarked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "Hope he's not always this excitable." Sarah stepped between Reynolds and Marianne, her body language protective. "Sir, I'll have that report on your desk first thing tomorrow." After Reynolds left, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Tommy's cries subsided to hiccups, and Max relaxed back onto his bed. "He always cries like that around certain people," Marianne said quietly, "like he can sense—" She trailed off, uncertainty in her voice. Sarah made a decision. "Mrs. Wilson, could you tell me exactly what Tommy does when he gets upset around people?" Over the next hour, a pattern emerged. Tommy's reactions weren't random. He'd been perfectly calm around other officers who'd visited, but three specific ones, Reynolds, Detective Morris, and Sergeant Wade, had triggered the same intense response. The same three officers who'd been present when Max disappeared. Back in her apartment that night, Sarah created a secure email account and began documenting everything. Tommy's reactions, the sedative in Max's system, the discovered security footage. She encrypted the file and sent it to her personal lawyer with instructions to release it if anything happened to her or Max. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Back off, Collins. Dogs get lost all the time in Atlanta. Sometimes they never come home." Sarah deleted the message but saved a screenshot. Then she made another call to her old partner in internal affairs. "Jake, remember when you said you owed me one? I need everything you have on Captain Reynolds. Off the books." She glanced at the photo on her desk. Her and Max at their graduation ceremony, both of them young and unaware of what lay ahead. Now, 6 years later, they were caught in something bigger than either of them. Across town, Marianne tucked Tommy into his crib, finally moved away from the window. As she watched him sleep, her phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Cute kid. Hope he learns when to keep quiet." In the veterinary hospital, Max's ears twitched in his sleep. Under the sedation, his highly trained brain was processing everything he'd witnessed at the warehouse. The scents, the sounds, the hidden package he'd discovered before the darkness took him. The truth was there, waiting to be uncovered. The question was, who would survive to tell it? 6 years earlier. "He'll never make it through training," Sergeant Wade smirked, watching the Belgian Malinois struggling with the obstacle course. "Too soft. Look at him helping that other dog." Sarah Collins, fresh out of the academy, watched as Max stopped his run to nudge a fellow trainee over a wall. Even then, she saw what the others missed. Not weakness, but intelligence. The ability to assess a situation and make a choice. "I'll take him," she said. Wade's laughter echoed across the training field. "Your funeral, rookie." Now, sitting in her apartment with Max's badge in her hands, Sarah remembered that day. They'd proven everyone wrong. Max hadn't just completed training, he'd excelled, developing a reputation for finding what others missed, like whatever he'd found at that warehouse. Her phone buzzed. "Jake, from Internal Affairs. Got something. Reynolds made some interesting deposits last year, meeting in 20, the usual place." Sarah grabbed her keys, then stopped. A new text. "Your dog wasn't the first to get curious. Ask Martinez about 2019. The veterinary clinic was quiet when Sarah arrived. Dr. Martinez was finishing her rounds, her face tightening when she saw Sarah. "I need to know about 2019, Sarah said without preamble. Martinez closed the door, checking twice to ensure they were alone. "I wondered when you'd ask." She pulled out a worn manila envelope. 3 K9 units died that year, all ruled accidents or health issues, all had Reynolds as supervising officer. The photos inside the envelope made Sarah's blood run cold, the same precision bindings, the same sedative, but these dogs hadn't been found in time. "Why didn't you report it?" Martinez's hand shook. "I tried. The investigation disappeared. A week later, my daughter's daycare received photos of her on the playground. I got the message. A child used as leverage." Sarah thought of Tommy, of Marianne's text. The pattern was clear. Her meeting with Jake took place in a crowded diner. Between bites of apple pie, he slid a USB drive across the table. "Reynolds isn't working alone," Jake murmured. "Last year, 3 major drug busts went sideways. Evidence disappeared. Dogs got too close. They disappeared too." He took a careful sip of coffee. "But here's the thing. The money trail doesn't end with Reynolds. It goes higher." "How high?" "Police Commissioner high." Sarah's phone buzzed again. A photo. Tommy at his daycare, taken an hour ago. Below it, a message. "Kids get into accidents all the time. Back off." But they'd made a mistake. In the background of the photo, reflected in a window, was a distinctive tattoo on the photographer's wrist. Sarah had seen that same tattoo at the warehouse just before Max disappeared. Detective Morris. A memory surfaced. Max's behavior had changed that day after Morris walked past their vehicle. He'd picked up a scent. Not drugs, something else. Sarah drove to the warehouse district, parking where they'd been stationed that day. The setting sun cast long shadows across the cracked pavement. She closed her eyes, reconstructing the scene. Morris had walked past. Max had tensed. Then, what? Her phone rang. Marianne, her voice tight with fear. They're outside our house. Black SUV. No plates. Tommy won't stop crying. Get out now. Use the back door. I'm sending someone I trust. Sarah called the one person she knew wasn't dirty. Her old academy roommate, now a federal marshal. Kate, remember that favor you owe me? I need a safe house, and I need you to hear a story about dead dogs and dirty cops. At the veterinary clinic, Max was finally awake, his eyes alert despite the pain. When Sarah entered, he lifted his head, then did something unexpected. He pawed at his collar. Sarah knelt, examining the thick band. There, almost invisible, was a seam that shouldn't exist. Inside the collar's lining, she found a micro SD card. Max hadn't just found something at the warehouse. He'd managed to grab evidence, and they'd nearly killed him for it. Her hands shook as she inserted the card into her phone. Video files. Dozens of them. The last one dated the day Max disappeared. The first frame showed Morris and Reynolds, faces clear as day, handling packages with a distinctive cartel mark. But it was the conversation that made Sarah's breath catch. Commissioner wants this route cleared by next month. Elections coming up, and his friends down south are getting impatient. What about the K9 units? Same as always, dogs have accidents all the time in Atlanta. Sarah's phone buzzed one final time that night. Jake, found something big. Meeting tonight. Bring the evidence. Then seconds later, from the same number, don't trust the previous text. They have Jake. In her apartment, Sarah laid out everything she knew. 3 dead K9 units in 2019, a police commissioner taking cartel money, a baby who could somehow sense the corrupt cops, a micro SD card full of evidence, and a partner who'd risked everything to get it. She looked at the photo from their graduation again. You weren't being soft that day, she whispered to Max's image. You were showing me who you really were, a protector. Her decision was made. She couldn't trust the department, couldn't trust internal affairs. But maybe, just maybe, she could trust a baby's instincts and a dog's loyalty to expose a truth 6 years in the making. First, though, she had to keep them all alive long enough to tell it. The safe house was a small cabin 30 miles outside Atlanta. Marianne sat by the window, Tommy asleep in her arms, while Federal Marshal Kate Chen checked the perimeter for the 3rd time that hour. They found Jake, Sarah announced, entering the room. Her face was grim. His car. There was an accident on Highway 20. Max, still favoring his injured leg, pressed against Sarah's side. Despite doctor's orders to rest, he'd refused to stay at the clinic once he'd sensed Sarah's distress. Now his ears twitched at every sound from the surrounding woods. Tommy stirred in his sleep, whimpering. Seconds later, Max's head snapped toward the kitchen door. Down! Kate's command cut through the darkness. Glass shattered as bullets tore through the window. Sarah pulled Marianne and Tommy behind the couch, while Max, injured but alert, positioned himself between them and the door. Back door, Kate whispered, her weapon drawn. Cars ready. They crawled through the kitchen as footsteps crunched on broken glass in the front room. Tommy, somehow understanding the need for silence, pressed his face into his mother's neck without making a sound. A floorboard creaked behind them. Max reacted before anyone could blink, launching himself at Detective Morris as the corrupt cop rounded the corner. The Belgian Malinois might have been injured, but 6 years of training kicked in. Morris went down hard, his gun skittering across the floor. "Run!" Sarah shouted, covering their retreat. She heard Max yelp in pain as Morris landed a kick, but her partner held on, giving them the seconds they needed to reach the car. Kate gunned the engine as more shots rang out. Through the rear window, Sarah saw Max finally release Morris and sprint after them, favoring his leg but moving with desperate speed. "Stop!" Marianne screamed. "We can't leave him!" Sarah was already opening the door. Max made a final burst of speed and leaped into the moving vehicle as Kate swerved onto the main road. "He's bleeding!" Marianne gasped, seeing fresh red stains on Max's bandages. "First aid kit under the seat," Kate directed, taking a sharp turn onto a Forest Service road. "We've got a different safe house, but we need to move fast. They're going to have every corrupt cop in Georgia looking for us now." Sarah's phone buzzed. A video message from an unknown number. Her hands shook as she pressed play. Commissioner Davis's face filled the screen. "Officer Collins, this has gone far enough. Think about the consequences. A tragic car accident involving a young mother and her baby. A decorated K-9 officer shot while resisting arrest? Is that what you want?" The message continued. "Bring me the SD card by midnight, just you and the dog. Warehouse 7, where this all started. Everyone walks away." "Like Jake walked away," Sarah muttered. Tommy began to cry, but this time it was different. Not distressed, but insistent. He pointed at Sarah's phone, then at Max's collar, then made a grabbing motion. "Wait," Marianne said, watching her son. "He does this when he wants to show us something. Sarah, play the video again." They watched together. This time, Sarah noticed what Tommy had somehow sensed. In the background of the commissioner's video, barely visible, was a familiar stack of crates. The same ones from Max's warehouse footage. "They're not at Warehouse 7, Sarah realized. "They're still at the original location. The commissioner's trying to split us up." Kate checked her gun. "That changes things. But Sarah, you know this is a trap either way." "Yes," Sarah agreed, scratching Max behind the ears. "But now we know which trap we're walking into." She turned to Marianne. "Your son, how does he do that? How does he know?" Marianne hugged Tommy closer. "The doctors called it heightened sensitivity. He picks up on things most people miss. Micro-expressions, subtle changes in tone, body language. They wanted to do studies, but..." She shook her head. "He's not a lab rat. He's just aware, like Max," Sarah said softly. "They see what we train ourselves to ignore." The Belgian Malinois lifted his head at his name, eyes alert despite his injuries. 6 years of partnership had taught Sarah to trust his instincts. Now she was learning to trust Tommy's too. "Kate, we need to make a stop," Sarah declared. "There's a veterinary clinic on the way. Dr. Martinez needs to come with us." "The vet? Why?" "Because she has proof of the other K-9 murders, and because..." Sarah checked her weapon. "If this goes bad, we're going to need someone who knows how to treat both bullet wounds and dog bites." Max's tail thumped against the seat. Despite everything, he was ready. Sarah looked at her partner, then at Tommy, who had finally stopped crying and was watching the dog with complete trust. "Commissioner Davis thinks he's setting a trap," Sarah said, checking her watch. 4 hours until midnight. "But he forgot something important." "What's that?" Kate asked, turning onto the highway. Sarah smiled grimly. "He's dealing with a mother protecting her child, a cop with nothing left to lose, and 2 beings who see right through his lies. I almost feel sorry for him." Tommy reached out to pat Max's head, completely unafraid of the battle-worn police dog. Max, in turn, gently licked the baby's hand. In that moment, Sarah knew, whatever happened next, they had the 2 most reliable witnesses in Georgia on their side, one who could sense corruption and one who could smell it. Now they just had to survive long enough to expose it. The original warehouse loomed against the Atlanta skyline, its shadowy bulk illuminated by sporadic security lights. From their observation point across the street, Sarah watched through binoculars as armed figures moved inside. "I count 6, Kate whispered, "plus Reynolds and the commissioner." Dr. Martinez finished checking Max's bandages one last time. He shouldn't even be walking, let alone. She trailed off, seeing the determination in the Belgian Malinois' eyes. In the unmarked van behind them, Marianne sat with Tommy, who had been unusually quiet for the past hour. The baby's eyes were fixed on Max, as if the two shared some unspoken understanding. Sarah's phone buzzed. "Midnight Warehouse 7, last chance." They still think we fell for it, Kate noted, checking her tactical gear. That gives us an advantage. Sarah knelt beside Max. Ready, partner? The dog's tail wagged once, firmly. 6 years of trust contained in a single gesture. The plan was simple, born of desperation and Tommy's unique gift. The baby had reacted strongly when shown photos of the warehouse staff, identifying 4 more corrupt officers through his inexplicable sensitivity to deception. Now those same officers were inside, thinking they had the upper hand. Remember, Sarah addressed the small team. We need the commissioner on video confirming the operation. The SD card alone isn't enough. Dr. Martinez handed Sarah a small package. If anything goes wrong... The vet's eyes were hard. This is the antidote to the sedative they use, the same one that killed those other dogs. Sarah secured the package and checked her wire. Everything hinged on the next few minutes. Marianne, she turned to the mother, if you see any vehicles approach, I'll signal, Marianne confirmed, holding up the burner phone. Tommy will know if they're friendly or not. As if understanding his role, Tommy reached for Max one last time. The dog padded over, allowing the baby to pat his head. For a moment, the warehouse and its dangers seemed distant. Then a door slammed inside the building, and reality crashed back. Move, Kate ordered. Sarah and Max took the west entrance, while Kate circled to the loading dock. The warehouse air was thick with the smell of oil and rust, perfect cover for their approach. They made it halfway to the office area before the first shot rang out. Collins! Commissioner Davis's voice echoed. I'm disappointed. Warehouse 7 seems lonely tonight. Sarah pressed against a crate, Max alert beside her. Through gaps in the storage racks, she could see Reynolds and Morris flanking the commissioner. Couldn't make it, Sarah called back. Traffic's terrible this time of night. Where's the SD card? Where's Jake's body? A laugh. Accidents happen, Collins, like the one about to happen here. A tragic story. Rogue officer, corrupted by grief over her missing partner, opens fire on her superiors. Such a waste. Max's ears twitched. Sarah felt it too. Movement behind them. The Belgian Malinois spun just as Officer Chen, no relation to Kate, emerged from the shadows, weapon raised. But Max, despite his injuries, was faster. Years of training and a lifetime of protective instinct launched him at the corrupt officer. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Sarah rolled behind a forklift as bullets sparked off metal. Through her earpiece, she heard Kate engaging targets on the loading dock. The sound of Max's confrontation with Chen echoed off the walls. Then, above it all, a baby's cry. Sarah's blood froze. How had they... Looking for someone. Commissioner Davis stepped into view, holding a phone. On its screen, a live feed showed armed men approaching the surveillance van. Call them off, Sarah growled, rising with her weapon aimed. The SD card, Collins, now. A yelp of pain. Max. Sarah's focus wavered for a split second. It was enough. Pain exploded in her shoulder as Reynolds's shot found its mark. She stumbled, weapon clattering away. You know what they say about old dogs and new tricks. Reynolds smirked, advancing. Through the haze of pain, Sarah heard something unexpected. Tommy's cry had changed pitch. Not distress now, but triumph. The warehouse doors burst open. Federal agents swarmed in, led by Kate and Dr. Martinez. The vet moved with the precision of someone who'd done this before. FBI, Martinez announced, weapon trained on the commissioner. 10 years undercover investigating K9 unit infiltration. Thanks for finally giving us enough evidence. Max appeared like a shadow, dragging a subdued Chen by the arm. Despite his injuries, despite everything they'd done to him, he stood tall. That's not possible, Davis sputtered. The baby, the van, was empty. Sarah managed through the pain. Tommy's safe at the FBI field office. Turns out he's not the only one who can sense bad people. Meet Agent Martinez's K9 unit. On cue, more dogs emerged from the shadows. The backup team they'd spent hours positioning, while Davis watched the wrong warehouse. The SD card, Reynolds demanded, desperate now. Sarah smiled through gritted teeth. Check Max's new collar, the one with the FBI wire. As agents secured the scene, Max pressed against Sarah's uninjured side, his mission complete. Through her earpiece, she heard Marianne's voice. Tommy's laughing. First time in days. In the end, it took a baby's gift, a dog's loyalty, and a mother's intuition to expose a conspiracy that had already claimed too many lives. But as Sarah watched the commissioner and his conspirators led away in handcuffs, she knew the real victory wasn't in the arrests. It was in the way Max, despite everything, still stood guard, in how Tommy had somehow known who to trust, in the simple truth that sometimes the purest souls see what the rest of us miss. Her shoulder throbbed, reminding her this wasn't quite over. There would be statements to make, evidence to process, a department to clean up. But for now, Sarah just hugged her partner close, whispering the words she'd waited days to say. "Good boy, Max, good boy." 3 weeks later, the Atlanta Police Department's K-9 training center was decorated with banners and blue ribbons. Local news vans lined the parking lot, cameras ready to capture what the papers had dubbed the ceremony of second chances. Sarah adjusted her dress uniform, the sling on her left arm, a reminder of that night at the warehouse. Beside her, Max sat perfectly groomed, his new dress collar gleaming. The scars from his ordeal were still visible, but like his partners, they were healing. "Ready for this?" Kate asked, approaching with Dr. Martinez, now officially introduced as Special Agent Martinez of the FBI's Animal Crimes Division. "Almost," Sarah replied, watching the entrance. A moment later, Marianne arrived with Tommy, the baby dressed in a tiny suit that matched Max's ceremonial collar. The ceremony itself was brief but powerful. Commissioner Davis and his network of corrupt officers had pleaded guilty, facing combined sentences of over 200 years. The evidence from Max's collar, combined with Dr. Martinez's years of undercover work, had exposed corruption reaching into 3 states. But today wasn't about the criminals. It was about honoring those who'd brought them down. Chief Johnson, newly appointed after the department's cleanup, approached the podium. "Today we honor not just bravery in the line of duty, but the extraordinary connection between humans and animals. A connection that in this case extended to our youngest hero." Tommy, secure in his mother's arms, reached toward Max as they approached the stage. The Belgian Malinois, still protective, positioned himself between the baby and the crowd. "Officer Sarah Collins and K-9 Max," the chief announced, "for extraordinary valor and dedication to duty, you are hereby awarded the department's highest honor." He paused, then smiled. "And for the first time in department history, we extend this honor to a civilian, even if he's not old enough to walk." The crowd laughed as Tommy received a specially made honorary K-9 badge, his eyes wide at the shiny object. "But perhaps the most significant announcement today," the chief continued, "is the establishment of the Maxwell Fund for K-9 protection, ensuring no police dog will ever again lack the resources or oversight needed to prevent abuse." Sarah felt Max press against her leg as they unveiled the fund's logo, a silhouette of a dog and a baby, watching over each other. The reception afterward was held in the training yard, transformed with tables and decorations. Max stayed close to Tommy, who had developed a habit of dropping bits of hot dog accidentally near the dog. "He still does it, you know," Marianne told Sarah, watching her son with Max. "That thing where he knows who to trust. The child psychologist says it might fade as he gets older, but for now," she smiled, "he's never wrong." As if to demonstrate, Tommy began crying the moment a new reporter got too close with his camera. Max immediately moved between them, and the reporter backed away. "Some things you can't explain," Dr. Martinez said, joining them. "In all my years studying K-9 units, I've seen dogs know things they shouldn't be able to know. Your son has that same gift." Sarah watched as Tommy finally fell asleep in his mother's arms, one hand still reaching for Max. The Belgian Malinois settled at their feet, alert even during the celebration. "What happens now?" Marianne asked. Sarah touched her healing shoulder. "Max and I go back on duty next week. Light assignments at first," she smiled. "But we'd like to request a standing play date with our favorite consultant, The sun was setting when the ceremony ended, casting long shadows across the training yard. As the crowd dispersed, Sarah knelt beside her partner. "You knew, didn't you? That night at the warehouse, you knew something was wrong before anyone else." Max's tail wagged once, his eyes wise and knowing. A small hand reached down to pat Max's head. Tommy, awake again and determined to reach his friend. The dog gently licked the baby's fingers, causing a burst of laughter. Sarah watched them together, the highly trained police dog and the baby who could sense truth, bonded by something deeper than words. In that moment she understood, sometimes the purest souls see what the rest of us miss, and sometimes heroes come in the most unexpected packages. "Come on, partner," she said finally. "Time to go home." Max stood, pressing against her good side. Together they walked toward the parking lot, where Marianne waited with Tommy. The baby was already reaching for Max, a gesture that would become familiar over the years to come. Behind them, the Maxwell Fund logo caught the setting sun, casting a long shadow. A dog and a baby, eternal guardians of truth, watching over those who couldn't see what they could see. Some called it a miracle, how a baby's cries had led to the rescue of a wounded K9 officer. Others called it luck or coincidence. But for those who were there, who saw the bond between an injured dog and a child who sensed his pain, it was something else entirely. It was a reminder that justice wears many faces, that heroes come in all sizes, and that sometimes the greatest acts of courage start with something as simple as a baby's cry. Max's new collar tag caught the light as they reached the car. Engraved on it was a simple message: "Truth has no size limit, courage knows no age," in memory of Jake Martinez and all K9s who died seeking justice. Tommy reached out one last time to pat Max's head before being secured in his car seat. The Belgian Malinois stood watch until the car pulled away, then looked up at Sarah, ready for whatever came next. After all, they had a new mission now, keeping the city safe for those who saw what others couldn't, and making sure no dog or child ever had to stand alone against corruption again. It was a big job, but they had the best team for it. A brave cop, a loyal dog, and a baby who could see the truth. And in Atlanta, that was all the justice they needed.